this project we're going to look at utilizing Spelt, and we're going to grind it fresh. We're going to mix it the previous night before production and incorporate all of our liquids, a little bit of a sourdough culture into it. And for this, in regards to volume-wise, I have another mill that I like to use. This one, the output is a little bit faster than the other mill that you might have seen in a previous project. Not that one of them is better or worse, it's just, again, investment-wise, this one's a little bit more expensive and will be able to handle the kind of output that I'm looking for. Again, with these mills, you want to make sure you turn them on ahead of time so that they're already running. Otherwise, the grain can stall the little millstone. You add a little bit of grain. You would have to make an adjustment to the actual coarseness of your flour. In this case, you would rotate the top head, bringing the millstones just a slight bit closer. So for the spelt bread, what we're going to do is we've already got our amount of water pre-scaled. I have my 4 grams of culture. I'm going to dissolve it in my water. And again, this would be something that you could do without, but I do think it adds some complexity to your bread. So get it into the water. Then we've pre-scaled everything. So when you see everything being poured in here, you're just going to have to trust us a little bit. I've got my pre-toasted seeds. And in this version, I'm just using sunflower seeds, but in the formula that I'm working with, sometimes I also use pumpkin seeds. Again, both of them are toasted. I'm going to add, let's do water first. Doesn't make that much of a difference actually. And then what I have here is I have buttermilk and my honey. Add that. And you're going to let this ferment overnight. And one thing that I would recommend, especially if it's on the warm side, you want to make sure that your liquid ingredients are very cold. Otherwise, with that little bit of culture, this flour, having been just milled, is enzymatically extremely active. So you want to make sure that it doesn't over-ferment by the next day. And you can do this in a bowl, you can do this in any container that you want to. It should just be big enough. It's not going to move that much, but you might get a little bit of a lift on the dough. And just mix it real well, cover it with some plastic, and then leave it at ambient temperature overnight, and then we continue the project the following day. On the second day of the 100% spelt bread, we've basically created our soaker, and now we introduce the salt. And what's really interesting to notice here is when you feel this dough right now, it seems very loose, almost like a pancake-like batter. And as soon as I put in the salt, it starts to tighten up. Make sure when you add the salt that you really distribute it well throughout the bread so you don't get any salt streaking. Then I'm going to add my yeast. I'm using an osmotolerant instant yeast for this. And we're going to basically stir this together till it's nicely combined. And then we're going to give this 1 hour of bulk fermentation. And this is where you can really feel this tightening up on you. You got to make sure you keep on working those layers through so that you don't get any salt pockets in the dough. So again, let it set for an hour, and then we start to divide. So for the spelt bread, we've given our dough an hour primary fermentation. I'm going to use these little loaf pans, which is 5.5 approximately by 3 by 2.5. Again, you can make them a little larger. I'd like to keep them nice and small. And I'm going to scale this using an ice cream scoop to 420 grams. And then afterwards, we're going to level this out using a self-made leveling tool. And basically what I did is I took a bench scraper, a plastic one, cut it to the size of the top right here so I can run this back and forth. What you want to do is you want to make sure it's nice and wet, and you're going to just compress that dough in here so it levels out. And as soon as it becomes tacky or starts to pull, wet it again, and then it'll glide over the top. And you just want to get a nice smooth surface established. This will make it much easier afterwards when you go to finish it to get a nice even loaf. So after you've leveled them out, again, a couple of tips. One thing you want to make sure you really spray the pans very well. This dough is very sticky, so to make it easier to remove them, you want to make sure that they're sprayed well. Once they're in here, we're going to cover them with a little plastic, and we're going to let them final proof for approximately about an hour. After that hour, we're going to put some finishing touches on. So after the hour of final proof, we want to finish these things off with a little bit of wheat germ over the top. What you want to do is just sprinkle it nice and evenly over the top surface. Gives it a nice little textural appearance. Flavor-wise, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference, but I do like the way it looks when it's finished. And then I've left it in this situation. Or you can also try to make it go over the top and put a little stencil on it. But again, it doesn't enhance the flavor of it, it just enhances the visual appearance a little bit. So the way to do that is, again, give yourself a nice dry little landing pad. And then you can use rye flour for this, or you can use just the regular all-purpose flour. Slide this over to the side. Made a little stencil with a little centering device so that I can lay it on top. Put a little flour into your sifter. And you want to do this with as little disturbance of air as possible. And then the idea is to use a sharp razor blade to make an incision right straight down the center here. That will give you a nice little lift as it bakes. And again, if you don't want to put the stencil on, you can just do this and cut it straight down the center. And then you're ready to bake it. I would bake these at 450 degrees in a deck oven for the first 15 minutes, and then drop that temperature down to about 400 degrees, and then bake it for at least another 35-40 minutes. Depan them and finish the bake. Depan for another 5 to 10 minutes.